Good evening, music multiverse listeners, and welcome to Beyond Your Radio. I'm your host, Mark Kuligowski, and happy Canada Day to all our Canadian listeners, viewers, watchers from north of our border. This is a special album review Saturday. I'm going to talk about two albums today that were released in the past week or two that are Canadian artists. I'm also then going to give you 10 records, 10 that I believe are fantastic and maybe lesser known or not known outside of Canada and maybe even inside Canada. Who knows? But before we do that, if you're new to the channel, I'd love for you to subscribe so that you don't miss out on anything. You know, these 10 records that I'm going to go over here at the end, you know, they bend genres, as well as really get to different arenas of music. So it's not just those that came out of a Canadian alternative era in the 90s. This goes back as far as 1956. So stay tuned for that here at the end. So what is the first record I'm going to talk about today? The first record is Time to Time by the Northern Pikes. This is a release that just happened about a week or two ago, if I'm not mistaken. Time to Time is a retelling, sort of the Snow in June recording. Their greater hits of that. Kiss Me, You Fool. A bunch of other songs right now. I can't think of it for some reason. This is a good starting point for you who doesn't really know this band. Maybe it is, I guess. This is a bluegrass kind of feel to these songs. And if you're not familiar with them, I don't think it'll affect it very much unless you're not a fan of bluegrass. However, I'm comfortable with sharing this with you anyway. Why? Because the album utilizes a style and picking that uniquely modifies this alternative 90s record that came, pretty much out of nowhere for us here across the border. We didn't really kind of have an idea of who the Northern Pikes were. We had some tastes here and there, but this record really came out. And the Snow in June, of course, this is 1990. And I can tell you that when it came out, this was, it kind of had a little quirkiness to it, which was it's uniquely Canadian. And it wasn't like anything else you'd heard. That featured 3 hits, which is Kiss Me, You Fool, which I said, and then She Ain't Pretty. And in that lyrical line, it talks about she ain't pretty, she just looks that way. And The Girl with a Problem. The album features a guest appearance from notable performers such as Garth Hudson and John Sebastian, who are well known in parts of Canada. So what do I, want to tell you more about this record? Well, the additional new songs at the end, there's 3 new songs that kind of fit this genre that they're in, this bluegrass type of feel, and they fit in so well that it's almost like they gave us something like an entire album, which I applaud them for, because you can just sometimes do this. This album is very much done in a pace and style that is like the Headstones record, One in the Chamber, where they take theirs and kind of give it that twingy rockabilly Irish folk kind of hint. Should you go back and listen to Snow in June? Damn right you should. It's a classic album from 1990 that's pretty much an alternative rock, but lighter. Think of your lowest of the lows. It showcases a plethora of unique and talented acts that go through that era of time, but it's so unique in their own style. The tones and music and genre bending that are alternative, but not anywhere near mimicking any other band that you know. So again, this is the Northern Pikes, Time to Time. It just released last week. The band members, Jay Semko, Brian Potvin, Don Schmid, and Kevin Kane. This is vocals, bass, guitar, drums. There's not much really different here except the mandolin and banjo. Next up is Amanda Marshall. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with Amanda Marshall, that's okay. She's been out of the industry for almost 23 years. Can't say she's out of the industry. I just don't know where she went, what she disappeared to. It's been 23 years since we've heard much from the music powerhouse female that shook the kind of the blues, soul, pop, radio waves of Canada and in the United States. Hell, She even opened for Whitney Houston. That's how popular she was. I saw Miss Marshall at the Great Canadian Party in 1992. And this small frame 19-year-old, that's what I was at the time, and my wife, Sue, delivered her set like some veteran blues soul singer. She commanded the microphone. She was emotionally sucking in every song and the audience with it. She's done this for a few years after that with 2 follow-up records. And if you ever get a chance, you don't know her that well, one of the songs that she does a cappella is called Inside the Tornado. This, all of you, I'm telling you this, has nothing to do with heavy lifting. Now let's get to heavy lifting, because this is where I'm having a slight issue. It's a good title. I can understand the idea of it, having been gone so long. Considering the years between and coming to grips with the decade change in music, actually 2 decades, this is not what I was expecting. But I wasn't expecting the past. What was I expecting? Well, I was expecting that vocal powerhouse, and I'm sort of getting that. But what I didn't expect was this poor lyrical choices that confuse the sincerity of an intention of the songs. Almost too comical at times, or we'll call it cocky. She's a blues singer, is my edge, with a pop edge. She's got soulful power and stuff, but these lyrical lines, I hope she cheats on you with a basketball player. Really? First of all, I don't know too many Canadians that use the word playa. Is that your dog? He wants a bone? Blah, blah, blah. Follow me home? I'm not following. Don't get me wrong. The band is playing it well. I get the idea of the bluesy, the riff, the get your toe tapping, this, I don't know, cocky walk or whatever you want, or the strut of a song. But I ain't the dog catcher. Is that's the chorus or the end? It's wasted rhythm and groove on poor comparisons. The song I'm Not Drunk then moves into a speaking, singing style, which has me really struggling 3 songs in, needing some sort of recovery plan very soon. But no such luck really comes for this. As a matter of fact, one of the next references in the song is Where God Split Ya. Yikes. If you want to depart to fun, cocky humor, alternative blues, soul pop with a vocal talent that's suppressing some of this power, in my estimation, and have some fun, this is your record. I think there are many people who will enjoy this record without question. For me, back in 1992, watching this young lady strut her stuff vocally, that's more what I want to see. The strutting of cockiness just doesn't work for me, especially maybe coming from someone that's my age now at this point. I think you can do the math. I'm sort of telling you that the band is doing what it's supposed to be doing here, and Rainbows and Gasoline, Halfway Love, and God Forbid will probably fit very well into the live performances that she's probably going to be doing, and I would go see her without question. The past is golden to my ear. The future is a heavy lift for me, unfortunately. So with that, let's do the bonus side and celebrate a little bit of Canada. And I'm going to give you 10 albums, and I'm going to start with my number 10. This is 10 Canadian albums that I think you should hear. Number 10 is Corey Hart's Young Man Running. Corey Hart's has been a long time performer in Canada with Sunglasses at Night and Too Good to Be Enough and other tracks from many, many solo records in the 80s. But this record, coming in 1988, is more adult contemporary and more confounding to a more rock, alt country kind of style and delivery that's poppy enough to get you interested. This is really adult contemporary in my ears. He's from Montreal, and with tracks like Young Man Running, which is the title track, The Caravan, Don't Take Me to the Racetrack, there's a lot of cool, upbeat stuff and a sincerity. And he has a wonderful vocal delivery that's basically, almost legendary. It is legendary in Canada, but not obviously here in the U.S. So Corey Hart, Young Man Running is my number 10. My number 9 is Synesthesis. Their album Desideratum from 1995. Now, this is a double record. This is progressive ambient. This band was formed on industrial side from musicians Bill Lieb and Rise Fulber, who basically are the people behind Frontline Assembly, if you're not aware of who they are. So this is going to take you down a dark ambient, more industrial type path. It's a tough listen, but it's a beautiful listen if this is your wheelhouse. So I go from adult contemporary at number 10 to number 9 with a little bit of shock and ear awe, which would be a progressive type ambient style with Synthiasis Desideratum at number 9. Number 8, let's go with some blues, but let's go vocal blues, because we all know that Canada can do the blues with people like Colin James. And this Angelique Francis, new album Long River from 2022, is that blues vocal. Now, it's kind of traditional. There's a lot of repetitiveness, but her delivery, her range that she seems to control is extremely good. It kind of reminds me of a Patricia Barber, and maybe even a Cassandra Wilson. It's a very good record, strong record. It's got a lot of critical acclaim. Might even have won some awards if I would have looked. I just didn't check. But I'd say she's a talent that's forthcoming and worth a listen if you're a blues singer lover. And she does have a little bit of that past, blues, old school, which is something that most artists seem to stay away from. But I think this is really well done. That's at number 8. So number 7, we're going to jump into the classical, and we're going to jump into something extremely well known in the classical world, and that's the Glenn Gould, the Goldberg variations, where Glenn Gould does Bach. This was Glenn Gould's debut record. He was a pretty well-known international pianist, but here he takes Bach in 1956, basically makes one of the best debut albums in the history of Canada, and it's one of the best known piano recordings of its time. If you haven't heard this, you need to. So that's Glenn Gould, the Goldberg Variations, 1956. He was born in Toronto. Angelique Francis, by the way, she was born in Ottawa. I wanted to mention where these people were from in the great country of Canada. Number 6, and this one is a unique one on this list. So this is Klaatu. 3:47 Eastern Standard Time is the name of the record. Why is this on here? Because this is classical pop, and I'm not going to give you the names of the people. Why? Because when this was released, everyone thought it was a certain band that had broken up and was trying to release its new material under a different name to kind of get away from their huge notoriety. Now, when you're one of the greatest bands of all time, or maybe the greatest band of all time, you can see what the frenzy started. They intentionally, I guess, left their names off. And apparently no one was really paying much attention to where the record came from by production rights. But Klaatu, 3:47 Eastern Standard Time, was released in 1976. And there were a lot of people, and there was a big buzz that this was actually the Beatles. Fortunately for the band, they were not. Unfortunately for those who were clamoring for a Beatles record, it wasn't the case. But what is the case is this is a very good record. Classic pop rock a la Beatlesque. It does sound like it. It does have those tendencies, has that psychedelia. And if you've never heard it, you should. So if you haven't, I'm glad you're checking this one out. At number 5, we're going to get a little bit more into, I don't know, we'll call it alt country blues or Canadiacana. Considering the band members here are Tom Wilson, Stephen Fearing, and Colin Linden. Now, Colin Linden is a major folk legend in Canada. Tom Wilson was the lead singer of a band called Junk House in the Canadian alternative 90s. He has a very deep voice, and it's very unique. And his songwriting, along with these two fabulous artists, really make Blackie and the Rodeo Kings a fantastic Canadian band in that alt country blues rock record. This album is Bark, and it's from 2003. They've also done multiple records with other artists, fairly popular ones that joined them, both female and male. They're very well known. And Tom Wilson is pretty much a very respected individual in the music realm. And if you're an interested party of Gord Downie and the Tragically Hip, he has a very unique story to tell with one of his books about meeting Gord Downie and the Tragically Hip for the first time in a club in Canada. Anyway, that's Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, Bark from 2003, Tom Wilson, Stephen Faring, and Colin Linden. And now I'll move into hip hop. What? Canada hip hop? Okay. No, this is way before Drake. I don't know whether you consider it hip hop or what you do at this point, but this is Maestro Fresh Wes. He might have been the first individual to really get a hold of being Canadian and being a hip hop artist, because it's not really something Canada was known for, especially with bands like Rush, Neil Young and Crazy Horse, and many others that was more rock country and other formats, alt country. But Maestro Fresh Wes was born in Toronto, Ontario, and this hip hop record in 1989 called Symphony in Effect is actually quite the De La Soul of a record. Production quality is not where it needs to be, but it's a really cool listen. It kind of brings you back to those Tone Loc Young MC days, and there's some unique pieces throughout. And I think he might be the only Canadian that era, in my estimation, that really stays with that blueprint. A lot of other Canadian hip hop recordings tend to go off in a different way and become a little bit more unique in their own and in Canada-ish Canadian lore, we'll call it. So that's my number 4. That's Maestro Fresh Wes, Symphony in Effect. Number 3, we're going to go into punk rock, and we're going to go a different route. We're going to go there via a soundtrack to a mockumentary film called Hardcore Logo. Now, if you watch our show, this was mentioned a little bit ago by Jeff Young. Hardcore Logo is a soundtrack from 1996 rock punk mockumentary about, well, basically Joe Dick, who's pictured behind me, is played by lead singer of the Headstones, Hugh Dillon, against a band member, Billy Talent was his name, who was maybe leaving his band, and there's a huge amount of friction. This is a punk record, hard as hell and mean as hell. Joe Dick is not a nice guy. Joe Dick is the lead singer of a band, and that's all he gives a shit about. And Hugh Dillon nails it and drives it so much home. Obviously, there is a drug-induced craziness going on as well, and just an out-of-control nature to the film. The songs themselves kind of fit that. Who the hell you think you are? Rock and roll is fat and ugly. Someone's gonna die tonight, and many others. This soundtrack is out there. There's also another soundtrack to it, where other Canadian artists like 5440 and others kind of write songs for the soundtrack, but they didn't. They're just kind of like I don't know what you would call it. They're additional music to it. So this is from 1996. Hardcore Logo. The Hardcore Logo soundtrack is done by the Headstones, and the Headstones obviously are from Kingston, Ontario, much like that other real famous band in Canada. Number 2, let's get blues rocky with Sass Jordan. Now, this is not her debut record. This is not her most popular record, I don't believe. I mean, Racine was pretty much the one that broke her big time. She's from Montreal, Quebec, although she has British citizenship, I'm pretty sure. Rats was done in 1994. And the one thing I like about this record is she holds nothing back at this point. The flavor for radio rock, that friendly stuff, was there in some cases, but she lets a little bit more go here. And the radio still picked it up regardless with songs like Damage, Pissin' Down, Head, Ugly, Take the High Road Easy. It's a straightforward blues record, and she is as close to Janis Joplin as you could get at that time of music in 1994. I did see her in 92 with Amanda Marshall at that same Great Canadian Party. As a matter of fact, she followed Amanda Marshall. Sass Jordan, Rats, 1994, number 2. My number 1 pick is the Trews. Now, I'm sure a lot of people know the Trews, but I'm sure there's a lot more people that don't. They might be reaching that tragically hip status. Might be that band that should be bigger and maybe just quite isn't. I've seen the Trews a couple of times. They're a great bunch of guys when they play and they bring it home. The Trews, No Time for Later is the name of this record. It's from 2008. Yes, it's hard rock. Just to give you the people in the band, it's Colin McDonald, John Angus McDonald, Jack Sipirik, and drummer Chris Gormley. The band currently basically is out of Hamilton. I think maybe they all started out of Nova Scotia. They're on this record, they do that which, gets radio play, but they ram it up a little bit and ramp it. And if you ever get a chance, there is a acoustic live record that kind of takes some of these songs and puts it on like an unplugged, as well as a storyteller, because he kind of talks about some of the music and how he designed it, or basically how songs can get misconceived by the listener. It can be one thing and be another. So this has Manitou Minds on it. This has Gun Control, which is a nasty shout out to why oh why do they second guess gun control? It's a jab at the U.S., which is nothing wrong with that. It's a powerful track and a good statement. They have a bunch of other songs on there that got a lot of radio play, especially No Time for Later. So my number 1 is the Trews, No Time for Later from 2008. Now, many of these bands that I mentioned here have multiple records, except I think for Angelique Francis. So you can always check all of those out. I want to thank you for listening. Happy Canada Day to all my friends in Canada and all those wonderful bands that make the music that I love so much. I mean, obviously, it's no secret that we do enjoy Canadian music, and we do watch out for it quite a bit. Again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We're on the web at www.beyondyourradio.com. I don't even know why I do the www, maybe because I'm showing my age again and again. Please subscribe. I'd love to hear comments on this one, see them about what you love in Canada. What's your top 10 that you would bring somebody if they weren't familiar with Canadian artists? What would be your 10? I've got another 10. I can keep doing this till all Canada Day weekend if I wanted to. But thanks for listening, everyone, and happy Canada Day.